Welcome to the last day of SPS annual second career week. My name is Veronica. I'm an assistant director of industry relations here at School of Professional Studies Career Design Lab. And I'm here to introduce our moderator, Ed Hoffman. Dr. Hoffman is academic director of the Master Science in Information and Knowledge Strategy program at Columbia University School of Professional Studies. Dr. Hoffman is CEO of Knowledge Strategies. Knowledge Strategies is engaged in research, education, and consulting services in support of organization performance. He directly supports the Project Management Institute as a strategic advisor with a focus on integrated systems for talent management, knowledge engagement, and learning strategies. Dr. Hoffman retired from NASA as a senior executive after 33 years. He has appointed a first NASA Chief Knowledge Officer in 2011 and held responsibility for system-wide strategy, integration, and deployment of knowledge services. Prior to this role, he was the founding director of the NASA Academy program, Project and Engineering Leadership, serving in this role for more than 20 years. During this period, the Academy was the top-rated project management academy in the world. In addition to leading the NASA Academy, he was the project manager for NASA Strategic Management and Governance Handbook that established new governance after Columbia shuttle accident. He started his career at NASA as an organization development consultant supporting NASA teams and projects and having responsibility for leadership development. Dr. Hoffman have written numerous journal articles and co-authored Shared Voyage, Learning and Unlearning from Remarkable Projects. It was published in 2005. And Project Management Success Stories, Lessons of Project Leaders, published in 2000. He served as faculty at the George Washington University in the School of Business, Drexel University in the School of Engineering, and University of Sydney. Welcome.
Very good.
Dr. Hoffman.
Thank you. All right, well, so I welcome, first of all, the students and the attendees here. We're going to have a fun panel. We have a diverse panel. We have a lot of expertise that goes all over in terms of backgrounds. And so I want to get really started by first introducing the folks that we have. And then we'll get into a discussion of what's the connection between curiosity in the current age and being comfortable in a time of uncertainty and discomfort. Even if comfort, I don't know if that's even the thing that we want anymore. So let me go around and first of all introduce Jeremy Cohn, CEO, Chief Executive Officer of Moody Brewing Company. We were joking, I guess, when I got here in terms of how do you make people comfortable. You say, here's a beer. So, but Jeremy will be talking. He's taken, I guess, a non-traditional path, a startup and entrepreneur going in a different direction. We have Shavit Bar Nahum, who's a learning and leadership development leader executive from the Bank of America. So in terms of banking and finances and focusing on learning, we've had some also good discussions. Jill Tipograph is a co-founder, and she's not an adjunct assistant professor, but she could be at Columbia University. Early stage careers, and so this is a topic that's very close because it really goes into how do you give advice to students, to young professionals, and I think also to parents in terms of that transition from going from school to work. So this is very close to that. We have Carolina Pincetic, who's my colleague from the Information and Knowledge Strategy program. She's really responsible for the program running, the operations, and really getting things done. She's also a graduate from technology management. I know we have some folks from the tech management program. We have Stephen Nikakiros, who is the managing director and shareholder global head of CBiz and Meyer Hoffman McCann CPAs. So we have accounting, again, finance in the house. And then we have Nicole Griffith, who is a graduate in campus inclusiveness, recruiting, financial services organization from Ernst & Young. So there's going to be a lot of stories and backgrounds of who they are. But first of all, we want to thank you for coming out to Columbia, to our campus, and give some of your thoughts and ideas. So we welcome you. So one of the discussions we had, so it's an interesting title, Managing or Exploring Your Curiosity in the Information Age, How to Be Comfortable Being Uncomfortable. I guess for me, the starting point is the question is what has happened in the world of work, maybe in society, so that this is an issue in terms of being comfortable, I guess because of the uncertainty, because of the change. What's happening in your different areas of work that makes this a important issue? We'll start with, anyway, maybe we'll start with you, Jill, because this is one of the things that I guess got you interested in the...
Well, I think the challenge that faces young professionals, so everything I just want to say that I'll be talking about, I think is from our lens of working with young professionals, you know, entering the workplace or transitioning early in their career. And the thing that we find so often in our practice is there's this unbelievable discomfort with the unknown, in the sense that your whole life, you know, you've had structure, you've had people supporting you, you've had professors you can go to, and then all of a sudden you're going into the workplace and that infrastructure kind of disappears. And so as you think about preparing for your career, what we always find is that by the time we get to the end of our work with students and they're, you know, getting employed, they realize how much they didn't know and how they had wished they had really done their homework and prepared better to transition to the workforce. But yet, how would you know, because you haven't been through it before? So it's this unknown that makes you uncomfortable, and then when they get through this job search process, even more discomfort and unknown kind of jiggers them, but then they kind of have this turning point and they start to have control. So I just think it's all of this uncertainty that makes them uncomfortable.
Yeah, and coming in my background at NASA, unknowns are the things you try to stop, and yet we're living in a world that's there. And it maybe I'll go to Stephen, because we had a little discussion before there where you say you can't expect anything. Right nowadays, I was, you know, when I graduated, I got lucky, I got into NASA. I thought I was going to stay there. I was going to hold that tree, you know, no matter what happened for the next 30 years, and that was kind of the notion. But now you can't expect anything. Maybe you can comment on your thoughts.
I've been out of school for over 30 years, but I go back to school and speak on campus every year, at least once or twice a year, speak to young people, and I really love everything that Jill said, but trying to help people understand, you know, the difference. And I think a lot of people, they wait too long, and they feel entitled. They think at the end of their college years, the job is waiting for them. And, you know, we try, and I try, and hopefully everyone, you know, tries to remind people, let people know that that's maybe the way it is for a very small percentage of students. You know, the majority of students really need to understand that it needs to be a full-time job to get a job. And if you don't think like that, then you are in big, big trouble, and you could disappoint yourself and set yourself up just in a bad situation. So, you know, that's one of the things, you know, and so we are not entitled, don't expect anything. You're not entitled to get a job making $100,000 a year when you graduate because you went to X school. You're entitled to nothing, and you know, really realizing that, you know, is something that hopefully happens before your senior year. So hopefully there are people here that are earlier in their career.
And we'll get into some tips and thoughts that, you know, what do you look at, you know, for when you're bringing on people, and how does those qualities continue? Just a follow-up for you. In my mindset, which is probably wrong, I would assume that if you're going into accounting, you have stability, and it's if you like that, it's more comfortable. Am I wrong?
You're totally wrong.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah, accounting, you know, to the layperson,
yeah,
you know, accounting is the green eye shade kind of thing, but it's really not. I'm sure my colleague will agree.
We'll hear
about
about
there's
that.
There's so many areas within the accounting profession that are very diverse, and you have totally different backgrounds. Don't even need an accounting degree to work in an accounting firm. So,
okay,
you know, I think people, you know, need to realize that there's a lot more.
Different ways of joining the firms, and that gets maybe to Shavit, start getting discussion there. We were talking about, you know, again, the notion that learning nowadays, people learn across different lines. You know, we have the different schools here, but often enterprise risk and, you know, in issues of technology and knowledge and sports even, they all commingle. What's your thoughts in terms of just why we're talking about this topic, and how do you approach it? How do you think about this whole notion of comfort and uncomfortable and uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with just a quick story. So when I was in high school, I was a mathlete. Do you guys know what that is? So I was like, when you guys went to parties, I did math. and I start with that because, one, math isn't even done the same way today that it was done, I'm going to say 10 years ago when I was in high school, but we're talking about 30 years ago. And, I come to help my kids with their homework, and it's a completely different, they do multiplication and division different than how we learned it when I was in school. And, it's like things are changing all the time, even math. And so when I think about, the world, I think about the fact that you have to be comfortable being uncomfortable all the time. And if you can't get used to the fact that change is constant and that it happens all the time, so even in the world that I support today, which is the risk organization at Bank of America, we're always thinking 4 or 5 steps ahead of what's coming and what's going to come. So whether it's market volatility that we've seen over the last 2 weeks, whether it's the geopolitical environment in different countries in the world, whether it's workforce automation and artificial intelligence that's changing the force of how people are going to work and what skills people need and how those skills need to change. You have to look at the world in a constantly ever-changing way. So if you can't, the only way that I'm comfortable today, and the only people I really look at, are people who are comfortable being uncomfortable, because the change happens all the time and all around you. And if you can't manage that change or figure out how to navigate through it, then you're going to have a hard time thinking about what the next steps ahead. Because there's no path that is set that you can kind of say, I'm going from a mathlete to a math degree to be a math, that doesn't work that way. I was a philosophy major, not a math major when I went to college. So things just change all the time.
Yeah. I was a psychology major and ended up running the NASA Academy for Programs. Yeah,
There you go.
I think I just want to add that there's nothing that you can do to plan your life that will ever work out the way that you thought it would. So even though you think you have it all laid out and you think that you got this degree from Columbia and you're going to go into your first job and you've decided what your career and what your skill is going to be, I think life happens and it will never work out the way that you thought it would, and that's okay. It might even be better. But I think you just have to accept that and just not get so hung up on, I wanted to be here in 5 years, or I wanted to be here in 10 years. You may be in a completely different place, never even saw it coming, and it could be so much better. So I think you have to let that go and just go.
I think I wanted to add more of an organizational perspective around the workplace experience. So I feel like, even as large organizations really think about people's expectations about their experience at work, we're thinking very differently around what our workspaces look like. And so we've spent a lot of time and energy really trying to create platforms where people can see inside of different offices, where the cubicles you can see over, it's not the high walls anymore, really to create that collaborative environment, which has really turned into the expectation.
The inclusion.
Around,
right.
Well, it's not even just from an inclusion perspective, it's also just around the way people are learning in college now. With, virtual environments, with, so many collaborative hubs, the expectation around what you do every day is different. And so we want to create an environment where people still feel that same energy being present, because at the end of the day, our people are what we're offering to our clients. And so we need to create spaces where they're able to bring their whole selves and are really able to learn and continue to develop.
Right. And the good news, because I see some people getting nervous the more we're talking about you can't plan and change and all this kind of stuff, but there's a major advantage, because every organization I talk to, consult to, NASA, their big concern is how do you get talent and how do you keep it? My generation was easy. They knew Ed was going to show up and he was going to be there. So now there's that that drive of finding people who have the expertise that you have. So it goes both ways.
I just wanted to add one thing to this conversation, which is that it's what really prepares you to master discomfort is to acquire skills that are transferable. So one of the things that we do in working with our students is making sure that early in college or before they graduate or in graduate school, that you work on skills that are needed in the marketplace today. So there's the combination of the hard and the soft skills. And I know myself, in terms of personal story, I've re-engineered myself at least 3 times in my career. And I have just found that all of my experiences have helped me prepare me for the next opportunity and to be open to opportunities. So that would be my advice to share with everyone, is acquire skills and experience that gives you those skills.
Yeah.
As much as it's skills, I would say it's really a mindset as well. I think you need to look at school as a place where you develop skills and the real world as a place where you apply those skills. But at the end of the day, as the world becomes a lot more interconnected, as businesses, organizations, as technology continues to grow, you're constantly going to be asked to be a bit more flexible. And you have to look at your job. No longer, I think, are people really a cog in a wheel. And I think as an employer, you're looking at your employees to adapt alongside the expansion of technology. So, for example, as businesses become a lot more global, as a local business in New York might grow into China and to other places, you're just going to have to apply skill sets that you've developed into new contexts.
I'd like to just follow up because the mindset, you went into a different area, right? You were in an organization, then you decided you wanted to do something different. Brewery, Moody Tongue Brewing, and success and all that. How do you start? What's the mindset that led you to that, or how do you develop? Can you develop, that kind of notion of doing it?
It's a great question, and I think actually to your point, I really apply the same exact skill set that I previously did. I used to work in investing, just in the context of a different industry. And so it's having that open mindset to apply it in a new realm. I also think that what a lot of people are recognizing is that happiness, which I think is fundamentally what people are looking for in life right now, is not necessarily directly always correlated with money. And so I think a lot of people have quite a bit more of an open mind. And I also think in addition to an age of change, we're also living in an age of comparison. So with Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, everyone's looking at what everyone else is doing. And so there's a certain comfort about understanding who you are and what you're looking for in conjunction with the fact that you want to be successful in a career.
Yeah. For a short period of time, for some reasons, during my 33 years, I didn't know I had a boss. I was working in the chief engineer's office. She really liked me, and she wanted me to start taking engineering courses to be the deputy chief engineer for the function. And the only problem, I went home to my wife, and she said, "You hate that stuff." I said, "Yeah, I know I do, but it's probably good. It'll help me get a senior executive position. It'll help, they were in NASA's an engineering kind of place. I can probably shift. I can probably do the work." And I was miserable for that short. I was just totally miserable, all the things. And people saw me, they said, "What's wrong with you?" It's not like, and so I think that goes back to that whole notion of, are you doing the things that you were enjoying?
Yes.
Or are you doing things sometimes that you feel you should, that maybe it's not?
I think when we first were speaking a little bit earlier, you mentioned you started at NASA in the early 80s with the expectation of being at NASA. I think when I studied at Wharton, and when I graduated, I remember our career services department was telling us to expect an average of 7 career changes over the time of our work life. So if you're going to expect 7 career changes, by the time I was 27, I'd already hit 3 of them. You need to develop a skill set that's broadly applicable, but I do want to also emphasize it's not possible fundamentally to be an expert at all things. In other words, you cannot be a jack of all trades, and you can't think you're going to be a jack of all trades, but rather you want to develop a skill set that is applicable in different contexts. So for example, I was applying a very similar skill set in my first job, which was at an investment bank, to my second job, which was in investing, to my third job, which is running a brewery, albeit all in the same context of big business organization, management, and finance.
The thing I would add to that, and I completely agree with what you said, it's really about passion. You have to do work that is meaningful to you. Mark Twain said, the 2 most important days in your life is the day that you're born and the day you find out why. And the bottom line is that you need to know what you're passionate about and what you love to do. And even though sometimes you might take an engineering class and it might be painful for a few minutes, you need to have that.
More than a few minutes.
More than a few.
Much more than a few minutes. Yeah.
You need to have that self-awareness to know what is important to you, what you love, and what you're passionate about. Because we do so much in my company around employee engagement and what it takes to really have an engaged workforce, and what do we see, and the lack of productivity that happens when people aren't engaged. But the bottom line around engagement is really passion. Because if you don't love what you do, you're not going to put your heart into it, and you're not going to come to work saying, today I'm going to be the best that I can be, or wake up in the morning and say, how can I be better than I was yesterday? Because if you love what you do, then you wake up with that energy. And if you don't, or if you're letting somebody else direct you to things that maybe are not aligned with what your passions are, that's when you become stagnant or you become complacent. And even if you do that, and sometimes, look, I'll say, even in my career, things take turns, and sometimes you're in a business that you love and sometimes you're not. You have to find a way to supplement the world that you're in with things that you love so that you can have you can have the balance and make sure that you fulfill your passion in one way or another, whether it's at the job that you're working or something that you're doing externally.
That resonates so much to me because I used to, in the role I had as running the NASA Academy, I would always try to meet with the young professionals who just joined NASA. And you'd always see people who were excited, their eyes were bursting, and I would say, how do you feel right now? And they would be feeling great because of themselves, their family, their friends, they were loving it. I say, you got to hold that because in any organization, I think in any work, you're going to have all those bad days. And if you're really not enjoying in general what you're doing, then those take you in a different direction. So I think that passion is important.
Ed, I agree. I think, I say passion and patience because, everyone, wants to love what they do, but I mean, you don't have every day is not the best day, that you could always think of. You do get hit with curveballs. And you have to be able to live through that. You can't have a couple of bad days and say, I'm out of here. I'm going to go to another job because this is not fun. I mean, I think people need to have a little more patience and really understand that it takes a little time to understand and grow into a position. And, I can look at my calendar over the last couple of weeks, and I've had a couple of really lousy days, but a couple of really great days. And those great days totally offset the lousy days and make me really enjoy coming in every day. But, you got to realize there's also some challenges you have to deal with. And I'm a CPA. This time of year, I'm working crazy hours. My wife knows I'm less available. I'm not getting home until regular hours. I'm not there to walk the dog. I'm not there to feed the dogs. Luckily she realizes that. We have that understanding, and I love her for that. But she needs to be patient with me. And these skills we're talking about don't only affect the workplace. I mean, these affect your life. I mean, you have the same issues that we're talking about in any relationships you have with family, friends. And I think these are skills, hopefully, some of the things that we're going to talk about, you could relate to any portion of your life.
Let me jump on the word passion because that was something that always made me incredibly nervous when I was studying in business school. Everyone was looking like, how can I be the most successful? Well, this person did this. Well, they're passionate about that. Like, what is passion? How do you find what you're passionate about? But what I found is think about what makes you happy, and it's not necessarily going to come during university. It's not necessarily going to come during graduate school. Is it who you surrounded yourself with? Is it what you do during the day? Is it what you do afterwards? Passion is, very generally speaking, I think, hard for a lot of people to find, and it's not just going to come to you when you're studying finance and find that you want to run a hedge fund. I think a lot of times you need to remove yourself from what other people are doing, think about who you are, and try and find how to capitalize on that.
Yeah.
I just want to add something related to passion, and what we're talking about in terms of young professionals. What we find is that most young people today are really idealists, and we have to help them wake up and understand kind of the different ways they can get into different industries, and to your point, to be patient. And so you have to find that balance between what do I really love to do, what makes me happy, what am I skilled at, and where am I going to find that intersection? So oftentimes what we do is help them through with career assessments so that they can find that intersection and realize that maybe there's a job out there that wasn't something they really thought about, but yet it seems to, be in the epicenter of this intersection, and it's like an aha moment. So I think you need to be open, and again, this discomfort, the unknown, and take the chances when you're young, but realize that, don't hold out because you think that, B of A is going to hire you for that job that you're really capable for in 10 years, because I think you have to be realistic about what am I capable of now to push me down that road of passion and happiness.
The other thing that you mentioned that makes me think back, when I was starting out, I didn't know what I was good at. I mean, I knew school-wise, this is what they prepared me to do in terms of consulting, in terms of data, in terms of all that. But what I kept hearing over again, and when I was appointed Chief Knowledge Officer, they said, why me? Because I didn't have a traditional background. And they said, you know why? And I said, don't get into the, what is it? And they said, everybody in the project engineering community, they love you, they know you. You have the relationships. And I remember throughout different times of my life, I was told, oh, you're friendly, people like you. I saw that as an insult because I thought being good at a relationship wasn't a hardcore skill. So I think the notion of how do you assess, how do you get people to see clarity about what you're good at, or entrepreneurship, or different, because sometimes the things that we're really good at that people value, we don't see, as maybe concrete. Want to maybe go into, so one of the things I want to say is this is interactive. So I'm going to ask another question, but I would encourage you folks to just give your hands that you want to ask these folks questions, because you have them right here, right now. We've been talking about all these skills and passion and mindset and qualities. What do you look for if someone's coming to work for you? What is some,
Honestly,
I mean,
the simplest form, and I think any employer or hirer would say this, just to make my life easier.
okay.
At the end of the day,
How do they know how to make your life easier?
well, that's a good point. But at the end of the day, you're hiring someone to help with some sort of function.
Right.
Right. And so sometimes there's a job description, and I think nowadays that job description seems to be growing and becoming more broad. But once you're hired for a role, the idea is, at the end of the day, a business needs to make money. That's why businesses exist. And so you do need to be nimble to the extent that someone may ask you to do something that you may need to look in a couple different directions.
Right. Someone who's willing to do different things,
Right.
someone who, it's about helping the organization be successful, and they're going to expect you to moderate and to adapt.
Yeah.
What else? What do you look for? What should they be talking about in terms of their skills?
I think, one of the reasons that I was really excited about, this panel is really the focus on curiosity.
Yeah.
And I think for us now, because we're recruiting for roles that don't necessarily exist. Like, our lines of business have traditionally looked for certain majors, certain skill sets, and these are very important. They're core skills. But because there's so many shifts and changes, industries are being disrupted, there's transformations around how information is being shared with the new digital platforms. And so we really need people to be able to be more agile, to be broader, to be versatile. And so even as someone may have a particular major that may be accounting or maybe, information systems, we're asking them to also push themselves to pick up an elective in something else, because we also want those mindsets. We want people who have a global mindset and understanding and appreciation for difference in other cultures. We want people who have a spirit of innovation, because at the end of the day, a lot of the problems that we're solving, you have to think outside of the box. So we certainly want the hard skills of being able to do forecasting, but then we also want people who are creative and can bring a comfort with change, not necessarily saying that everyone has that same degree of comfort, but understanding that learning how to ask the better question and learning how to be comfortable, learning how to ask the better question sets you up to, come up with new and different solutions, for your clients. And then the other piece is just this analytics. And again, not everyone needs to be a deep subject matter expertise. There's analytics programs popping up everywhere, but it's more around being comfortable with data and information and having a point of view for that data and information, and not just accepting what you may see on a balance sheet or accepting what you may see in front of you. It's looking beyond that and feeling comfortable doing that. And then the last part is just leadership. At the end of the day, we really like to see people who are focused on having an impact in whatever way that may be. Sometimes it's a club and organization you're involved in, or if you're currently working, when I speak with our experienced recruiters, it's people who may get involved in extracurricular activities that their firm may offer, because it's saying that you're not just here to do one thing, you're multidimensional. You want to identify opportunities where you can change the environments that you're in. And that's really, what we're focused on, people who want to leave a legacy and people who want to be a part of building change for our clients.
I just want to build on what you said, Nicole. I completely agree 150% with everything you've said. What I find really interesting today in terms of the employment landscape is that more and more companies are looking more with a lens in terms of fit of a prospective employee into the culture and the job. And so they are using more systems that have been developed for technologies such as, I don't know if everyone here's, I'm sure your company uses the Pymetrics or things like that, the mind games in terms of pre-assessing if someone has the skill or they have the socialization or adaptability to be in an organization where they can deal with change. You also have this in terms of the interview process, the layers that you go through now. There are many companies that use them in terms of the one-dimensional. You're talking into a machine, and they're evaluating everything that you're doing in terms of tonation of the voice, your body language, your eye contact. And while this is uncomfortable, getting back to our theme, in essence, I think it's a filtering process that ends up getting the more of the right people into the right jobs and organizations. So it's just interesting how, because of the skill set the companies are looking for, how they are developing tools to pre-assess it.
I was mentoring someone a couple of months ago, and he was in the investment community. Reminded me a little bit of Jeremy's background, and he was listing about 8 or 10 companies that he identified that he wanted to interview with, and he was having trouble getting interviews with those 10 companies. And I was trying to ask him why did you identify these companies as your companies? So he said, well, they're the best in the industry. I said, wait a minute. I said, how do you even know? How do you know that they're the best in the industry? How do you know what other companies are in the industry? I mean, these are large multinational corporations. There are hundreds of companies in this industry just in the New York area that are wonderful companies, right, much smaller, different organizations. You're not even considering them. I mean, your process is verkackt. It's just wrong. And I was just trying to really get him to think a little bit about being uncomfortable and realize that the opportunities that he's thinking about are way too focused, and he really needs to drill down and expand his thinking to try to really expand his opportunities. And luckily, I think he saw that, but I think a lot of people find they just want to work at a B of A or E&Y, and that's great to want to work at these companies, but they really have to understand the broader issue is, really what do they want to do and what opportunities are available, and there's so many more that they really need to understand.
Yeah, and it goes back to, again, an advantage. It's a global world.
Yeah.
So from an organization perspective, I know how do you get the talent, how do you get that focus? But from the standpoint of being able to get work or selling yourself, it really is a world entity out there, and there's so many different ways to go. I was going to ask you to translate for klept or whatever. Yeah, but we'll save that for later. Yeah.
I would just add a couple of things. So I completely agree with everything that you've said. And when we interview, it's not just one person that's interviewing. So different people look for different things. But there's a theme of things that we look for. The first I would just resonate is intellectual curiosity. There's just no question. If somebody doesn't ask questions, thoughtful questions in an interview, they're not going to any of the next rounds. I'm just being completely straight up about that. You have to be, it's not just about being prepared, you have to be curious. You have to really want to know. The other thing that we look for is resourcefulness and proactive problem solving. So, do you know how to figure out how to find the answers by yourself, or how to find the resources that can help you find the answers? And then the last thing that I would just add that I don't think was said is EQ. And at the end of the day, so EQ is how well do you know yourself, right? And how well can you manage yourself in situations that you're not managing yourself very well?
Yeah.
And
the
how well
emotional maturity.
That's right, the emotional maturity. And how well can you read a room? And how well can you influence the room and other people that are near you to help influence, impact, get people moving from one place to the other? And so, when you balance out EQ and IQ, and you can look at all the research around it, EQ is always going to win out on IQ. So yes, smarts are important, and you need to be analytical, you need to be thoughtful, you need to be curious, you need to be resourceful. But you also need to have a level of self-awareness and an ability to manage yourself and an ability to understand other people, because in these complex organizations, you don't work in a cube by yourself anymore. In fact, just thinking about the way in which work is, you're not either in a cube or in an office. Every office we have has glass windows. So if you're screaming on the phone at somebody, I used to coach a guy, we called him Angry Ali. That was his name. And the reason we called him that is because we did like an anger scale with him, and most people on an anger scale can get from like 1 to maybe 6. He would go from a 1 to a 10, at all times. And he would almost have this out-of-body experience when he was really, really angry with somebody, because he did not realize how he was being perceived by others. He just thought, I yelled, I got it over, and then like 3 seconds later, he would be fine and move on, whereas there's like a pile of dead bodies on the, on the hallway floor around him. And so the work that we did was really around creating that self-awareness, creating that level of mindfulness, around really understanding how do you recognize where your triggers are, and then how do you recognize the impact it has on others. And at the end, I'm talking like 2 years of coaching, his wife actually called me, and she said, I don't know what you did to my husband. He's in the garden gardening. I've never seen this before. But the bottom line is, it's something that you can develop if you really want to. And it's something that it's part of maturing, it's part of that, but you have to really have an awareness and understanding of who you are, what are the things that make you tick in one direction or another, and then be able to manage it in a way that has the right impact on other people.
It's an important thing, too, because, again, this came from my NASA experience. We would talk about the 4 A's of a successful career, and 2 of them everyone knew about. Ability. You have to have capability in your discipline. Assignments, it's doing the work. But the 2 that would sometimes trip people up, one was alliances. Do you have a network? The people who were the most successful project managers, systems engineers, they weren't the smartest people. They were the people who they can get on the phone. They had a problem and they can talk to others. The people we had problems with didn't ask other people for help. And the other A was attitude. And that was the one that would stop careers. We would have people, they were brilliant, they could stop, but they would be known as people who'd bring bridges
Toxic.
down in terms of relationships.
Right.
And all work nowadays is, interrelationships. And if you can't do that from a management standpoint, you don't need the problem of somebody. So it's a big thing that you pointed out. Let me start seeing if there are questions that you have from the audience that you want to go up to. I got many. Yeah. Can you walk up to the, just so we can capture it and hear it? Introduce yourself, your name, and.
All right, well, take stuff. Okay. Good morning. Thank you all for being here. My name is Juan. I'm a student of risk management here in the School of Professional Studies. And as Jeremy mentioned, the students out of college can expect to go through like 7 different jobs through their career. My question is, how would you guys feel about a candidate who goes to a job interview and says that he only wants to be in a position for a year or 3 years?
Interesting. So someone who's honest and says, I only want to be here for a year to 2, how does that play?
I'll jump in. Truthfully, I would be dramatically less interested because I'm not going to want to rehire for that position a year later. I think that's somewhat contingent on what the position itself is. But truthfully, I think from an employer's mindset, you're not hiring always with the expectation of rehiring. And I think if you're trying to grow a business, which really is a community of a team, you're not looking to encourage turnover.
I just think it's important. It's a great question, and I think people on your side of the desk really need to understand. You have to put your mindset of the employer side, right? You have to just turn around for a second. Wait a minute. If I'm the employer, what am I thinking? Someone just says to me they want to work for my organization for a year. Is that something they're going to embrace? And the answer in a lot of cases is going to be no. If you said that to me in an interview and I thought it was a great interview, you're done.
It's like telling me I only want to date you for the next month.
Right. I would just add, so while I would appreciate the honesty, which I think is important because I do the same thing. So realistic job preview is very important. I always tell people what they're walking into, what the good is, what the bad is. But I would just think about positioning your thinking in a slightly different way, which is really about what your goals are and what it is that you want to accomplish. And you never know, because by saying you only want to do it for a year or 3 years, what you're demonstrating is that you're actually not curious about, can you achieve those goals that you want to achieve in the company that you're interviewing with? So if you're planning on switching careers and like going from financial services to consumer products to engineering to NASA that's something else, and you got to think about a different career path and focus on internships. But if you really are looking to continue to grow your skills in different ways, then you actually need to be more curious about, and you need to talk about your goals in terms of what you want to achieve and what you want to learn, and position it from that perspective versus, look, we know when we hire people, especially millennials, and I'll be very frank about it because it's a very different generation. We know that I don't want to say the attention span, because now I'm overgeneralizing, but we do know that there are many things that you're interested in, just like there are many things that my generation is interested in. And you approach them from very different perspectives. So there is an understanding of the generation that's coming into the workforce has a very different perspective and mindset than my generation that's in the workforce today. But I would just say you've got to demonstrate, you've got to think about it in terms of goals and not in terms of, things that you need to tie off your list of things that you want to do, because what you want to do is open doors for yourself, not shut them.
So let me go to Nicole, but I want to follow up that because I could sometimes see in my position at NASA people who they change their career, they change their work a lot. And I would tell my deputy, I said, this person is great, but we're going to be changing them out in 2 years because that's the way it is. How do you deal with that notion of you see a candidate who's really good, who you want, and maybe he doesn't say, hey, I'm going to be here for a year, but you see based on the background that maybe the likelihood is 2 to 3 years? Or how do you look at that? Or do you see it as that's not an issue, that you can turn it around by good leadership? Or because it sounds like we acknowledge that people are, you say people change their careers every 3 years anyway, so it's, how do you how do you approach that?
I mean, I think what was already shared actually kind of answers that, because from the employer perspective, when we hire someone, we're looking to invest in you. We understand the totality of your previous experiences that may lead you from a mobility perspective to be a strong candidate for other roles that come up within the organization. So we're not necessarily saying that you have to be in this one role, this one seat for the entire number of years of your career. So, I mean, I think that that's, a really important thing to remember, that when you come to an organization, that there can be multiple things that you get attached to. So we're not necessarily thinking about it just in that one dimension. But I do feel like there's a great deal of investment. As I said, for us, we're not building cars. Our people are the products that we offer. So there's a great deal of time and energy spent in learning and development in the classroom, whether it be virtual, whether it be web-based learning, because we want you to feel like you're developing your subject matter expertise. And that expertise doesn't just cut across sector knowledge. It's about how to be an effective leader, a leader on a team, a leader in a client situation, a leader from the business perspective. So there's a lot that goes into that first year without it just actually being the day-to-day components of your job. So it's very challenging to say who you'll even be after that first year. We have people who came in thinking one perspective, and then based on the things that they were exposed to, the coaching they received, it's like, wait a minute, I just heard about this new opportunity. Is this something that I can explore? And then that's when the notion of mobility comes in, and we can say, well, wait a minute, maybe this is something you can explore, or maybe you need to do X, Y, Z, and how can we incorporate that into the current things you're doing so that you can consider that in time. So I definitely don't feel like we look at talent in a way that's like, this is you forever. The hope is that we invest in you and you continue to, get the skill sets that make you someone who can be, eligible for lots of opportunities across the board.
There's a time frame. I would think about somebody, it's going to take, several months until they're really at the point where there's, they're delivering all the things that you're looking for. So if it's too quick, then that investment is not as useful.
There's also, just to raise that, to go further, I mean, for example, I could see you say, and would be appropriate to say in an interview, I'm interviewing for a position in my world, the audit department, but you know what, I'm not sure audit is really going to be a career I want to spend the rest of my, an area I want to spend the rest of my life in. Are there opportunities to transfer into other areas in the group? I might want to do consulting, I might want to do tax, I might want to do something else, so is that an opportunity? And that, and that maybe is really what you were thinking to begin with, but maybe not in the same firm, or you want to use a stepping stone. But that's a very intelligent discussion to have with an employer. And that shows that you're thinking a little bit about your career. You're flexible. Are we flexible? Which is a good point. Again, I think it might be getting the same, question, but just asking it very differently. And I think, again, and that's where, in my opinion, practice makes perfect. In this example with this person, he's trying to interview with these top 10 firms. He's getting no opportunities. He's not even trying. If he would have interviewed maybe with second or third tier firms, he might have been 10, 15 interviews, learning while he's going, learning the good, the bad, and the ugly, getting these things. Look how many things that she was saying you need to think about when you're interviewing. It's freaking crazy. It's unbelievable what she's saying. If you're not out there practicing, you're at a huge disadvantage. So use the employers to practice, but be genuine and be sincere. Don't ever go to an interview saying, I'm just going to practice. I mean, that would be very, very bad. You certainly maybe think that way down deep, but you never know. You got to be open-minded. But you go on that interview very, genuine, sincere, because if you're not, it comes across, and that's a waste of everyone's time.
Just
Jill.
one piece of advice. What everyone said here is, very accurate and important. But when you asked the question, the impression that I got was, it's about me, it's not about the company. I mean, I was just in an article for Fast Company, it came out yesterday, and my whole point to them was that, your first thought process has to be, how does this impact the employer, not me? So, I think you do need to rethink how you go about that. And I do agree with Chavi that, if your goal is really 1 year, don't go on these interviews that are for full-time jobs that are looking for you to stay and to grow. What we have seen in the entry-level marketplace is this burgeoning kind of landscape of fellowships and extended internships, and it relates exactly what Nicole's talking about, is the investment from an employer standpoint. They're tired of being burned. So they're now, in a power position of trying you out and it being conditional and not having to commit to you while you're actually a worker in a kind of conditional capacity. So maybe you look at those tracks if you really know that in a year maybe you're going into a family business, whatever it might be. But I really think that young people today, young professionals, have to put the employer hat on, not the personal hat on, when they're going out and trying to build their career.
And maybe a follow-up, is a fellowship, an internship, is that a good way to start? Is that?
Well, actually, it's one of the more popular ways to start now, because what we're finding is, when you go look at jobs, they say 0 to 2 years experience. So our clients are saying, oh, well, that's me. And we're saying, no, that's not you, because they really want 2 years of experience, and you didn't really acquire that when you were in college. So what you need to do now is to get a fellowship or an internship, which is more difficult after you get out of college, so that you gain the experience and the skills so that those employers want to employ you. So there are more and more programs out there, companies that are just developing this for both reasons.
Would you also tell them then, I'm guessing you would, that while you're at the school or you're part of it, you'd be pushing for internships? That's how I got into NASA.
Well,
I was doing my internship at NASA. I was told you're never going to work there, but you get great experience, and it changed.
Well, definitely. My partner tells a great story when we speak to parents and to kids in terms of the fact that, before we developed early stage careers, she was an executive recruiter, and for both of her sons, I think it was Thanksgiving break, freshman year, they came home and she said, you need to work on your resume. And they said, I don't have one. And she goes, give me a half hour. So she came back with a piece of paper. It was blank. And I go, well, that's not my resume. And she says, it's exactly right. Starts all over. 4 years, build your experience, get the internships, get the skills. So, and sometimes students may go to universities which are not in metropolitan areas like Columbia, and they don't have the resources, but there are so many virtual opportunities today, as well as even doing work for professors. So many professors work on projects, or adjunct professors, they have consulting businesses, to get to your point, Javi, that be resourceful, be creative. Yeah. There's so many ways to acquire experience and skills.
Yeah, and again, that gets into, it's not the straight path anymore. It's not the linear. It's looking at creative ways and different approaches, which probably meets some of the things you're talking about, as you see someone who's tried different ways to get out there and get experience. Questions? Any other questions? I've got, you want to start coming up? And you're making me think of a lot of different things, but I think this is your time.
Good morning. My name is Olga Sobel, and I work in real estate, and I'm getting a business certificate here at Columbia. I absolutely love what I do. I love real estate. I love working with people, but I'm very uncomfortable putting myself out there in social media. So do you have any suggestions?
Interesting. So social media, which is a major thing.
I know it's important in today's life.
Can I ask a follow? What's making you uncomfortable?
It's just not natural. It's not personable.
It's not personal.
Yeah. No, and I mean, that's one of the things that, now again, I'm a very much different generation, but at different points I've been told, put it onto LinkedIn or put it on Facebook, and if I know somebody, if I know it's Amy out there, then I'm feeling good about it, but then if I don't know, but that's the point of social media. So how do you deal with that? What's advice? What's your thinking about social media in terms of?
LinkedIn is fine for me, but posting things on Facebook or other platforms.
I don't know that you have to post things.
I noticed
And
that it
in fact,
helps
many
other
people get in
agents.
trouble by the things that they post because they have no filter. So, look, I would say you need to follow and do the things. This social media isn't about being uncomfortable, like making yourself comfortable in an uncomfortable world. Social media is one avenue by which you can get to people. It depends on what your goals are and what you're trying to accomplish. So if you're trying to get your name out there and build clientele, then you have to use the mediums that they use, in which case then you have to force yourself to be uncomfortable. But if it's really about posting your opinion and what you feel about gun control and the state of our society, then social media doesn't have to be for you, and there are many other things you can do that can get at that. So it depends on what you want to use it for and how it can help you achieve the things that you want to achieve.
No, it's to promote the business.
So are there people in your, again, I would go back to what, what do you see? Do you see your peers or people that are using that, and are they
Lots.
succeeding? Are they succeeding?
are.
In your opinion, you believe they're
It's
succeeding?
mostly millennials, I guess.
There
very good.
are firms that actually work with small companies or individuals to help them do the promotion on social media, so you don't have to do it. They know all the ways to do it, all the ways to position yourself on Google, all the kinds of Facebook things and LinkedIn and Instagram posts that you need to have that I don't even know half the things about. And you can leverage those kinds of services to help you, navigate that space and figure out how to get more comfortable and ease into it.
Maybe that's what I need.
Yeah. Well, but I guess it gets to the whole comfortable, uncomfortable, and how you what's being used.
I also think there are ways to ease into it. Like you didn't really explain like what your colleagues are posting, but I do know for some people what they try to do is they use it as a means to share knowledge and information that may not be actually them writing a blog. They may have a particular client that they know that there's an issue that they're working on, or based on a previous conversation that you had, that this information may be helpful to them. And so it may be sharing that particular article with a thoughtful note as follow-up to your conversation. So you're using the fact that there's information out there as a way to reconnect, because it's ultimately about the relationship. It's like that information that keeps coming in front of you, and you're like, oh, okay, this is why I should talk to XYZ person, because they're staying on top of these trends and I won't have to worry about them, not knowing about the information. So I think that there are like small steps that you can take that may make you more comfortable, that might not just feel as not as genuine when it's like, oh, I just feel like I'm posting for posting's sake. But it's like if you've had a thoughtful conversation with someone and you know that there's an issue or a problem that they're trying to solve, or an article that may be of interest to them, then you can follow up with them in that way as a way to kind of build the confidence to then say, okay, well now I'm going to start doing this more frequently because I've gotten some good feedback from the people that I've shared it with. So now this is what I'm going to be known for. I want to work on my brand in that way.
I think it's important to understand what you're using it for specifically. I'd say if it's a necessary part of the job, from an employer's standpoint, if you're not good at it, for example, I am not good at social media, we either outsource or we hire for it. So we may work, for example, with a public relations company, or we may actually hire someone, a millennial per se, which we have done, to be on our team who can oversee that. If that's not financially possible, where I've oftentimes find a lot of comfort is looking at others who are successful in that realm. So I run a brewery, I look at other breweries I believe are successful in the context of social media, and I'll start truthfully with mimicry, just in the context of our brand. Look to others to help as a platform for me to become more comfortable with what our consumers are going to appreciate.
Yeah, and it depends, I guess, like you're saying, if you're entrepreneuring and you're selling something, then it's getting it out. If you're part of a larger firm, often they're taking care of, obviously, those kinds of issues, so it's a different thing.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Good luck.
One of the things that we've touched on in different ways that I want to come back to is Jeremy talked about, I'm hiring based on people who are going to make things easier for me. Jill was talking about the fact that, paraphrase, it's not about you, it's about how do you help the organization. We've had that theme. What are the challenges that you or the organizations that you're a part of have that make when you're talking to somebody that you feel that they can solve this challenge? What are the challenges you're currently dealing with in your organizations or at work that makes you look for a certain set of skills or one person as opposed to another, right? So,
Well, you talk about the millennials. I mean, you know, the millennials are very, very computer savvy, and the whole business world is becoming, you know, much, much more computer savvy. So like we already said, the way that we did our job 10 years ago is not the way that we're doing our job today. And, you know, I love sitting down with people, you know, that are younger than me and talking about an issue and having them figure out another way to go online and get information, get statistics about operations, you know, pull down information, you know, put it into pivot tables, you know, analyze it, you know, bite it, kick it, and come back with information that's going to help make our project and our work much more valuable to the client. And they bring value to the scenario.
So one of the challenges maybe you're looking for, how do you sense the environment? How's data being used? How are people comfortable with maybe some of the technology so that they can help you in being successful?
What Jeremy said,
So
make me better. It makes me better.
Let me speak to a word that you actually used a while ago, which I think is, from my perspective, most important in the context of hiring, is resourcefulness. I remember my first job out of school, I used to sit at a computer, and there was a guy who used to sit next to me, and I'd ask him questions, and he'd just say, Google it. Right now, you go to school to develop a skill set, but the application of that skill set in the real world may be a lot more difficult. It's really, how do you not solve a function, how do you solve a problem? And it requires an open-mindedness to do so. So resourcefulness, I think, is incredibly important, because when you're hiring, especially for jobs that may have or look to flexibility in what you're going to be doing on a day-to-day basis, I just want to know that even if you don't know how to do it right now, you can figure out how to do it.
So should I come with you with problems I've had and how I have dealt with them in a resourceful way?
A great representation. And truthfully, it may not sound to someone's advantage initially, but talk about how you accomplished a task that is not something you were trained for.
Yeah, the unexpected problem that comes up that you know, you had to take different routes to it. That's interesting. And again, the use of stories, you know, I'm a believer in stories, that you should have some stories in terms of what's the problem, how did you approach it, and ultimately what was the success. You should have a few of those in your head, I think, to share.
Oh, yeah.
What about the rest of you? What would you advise in terms of how they can demonstrate that, I mean, people are going to come and say, hey, I'm a people person, right? I mean, even if they're, so, but what do you look for? How do you look for curiosity?
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I think the challenge with your actual question is that's not really the way that we think about finding talent.
Okay.
Because I don't necessarily know what the problem that my client's going to bring is. Like, we're a professional services firm, so the problem could be coming in any number of directions. So we're not necessarily saying that we're looking to you to solve a particular problem. Which is why I was, focused more on what's the impact and legacy you want to leave in your environment. So what we're looking for are people who, when they came to the particular school or program, they have their why. They know that this was there was a reason that they chose this particular course of study. They know that there's a reason why they might have chosen this particular internship or this particular job on campus. It's being able to articulate your thoughts and experiences in a way that allows me to feel like, okay, when I give you the additional training and context that you may need in a client situation, you're going to then, as they were talking about, be resourceful enough to then help us come up with innovative solutions, potential recommendations. You're not going to just sit there and let other people come up with ideas. You're going to be a part of the conversation and a part of engaging to solve the problem in a thoughtful way. So usually, and I really like that example around the blank resume, because it really challenges you to say, well, what do I want people to see when they look at that piece of paper about me? This is my story. Right. So the difference between someone's resume who, went to a particular college and the only thing that I see is relevant coursework. Well, yeah, you went to class and you have a major and they told you that that was your expected relevant coursework. But when you look at a resume and you see someone who was involved in a host of different organizations, whether they be professional organizations or cultural-driven organizations or volunteering on their campus, it's someone who's thinking about how can I bring myself into a situation and be a part of that situation and have an impact and make a difference. It's also looking at the particular roles that you had. Sometimes times your first set of jobs are not going to necessarily be ones that give you the experience to then say, oh, I'm going to come in and, make this really sophisticated recommendation for a client. But what it did teach you is how to take thoughtful notes, how to think of the types of questions that we may want to ask for a client, how to have those presentation skills, whether it be with PowerPoint, how to be able to manipulate Excel in a way that allows you to cut and slice the data and information in a thoughtful way. So I think it's just really taking the time to maximize what's in front of you because you are on a campus, spending that time going into a career center. I mean, the most common thing, we start with freshmen telling them, you need to walk in there immediately because there's information that you don't know about that if you don't take the opportunity to really jump in and get it, you're going to miss out. It's too late to wait until you're actually looking for the job to find out the information and the steps you need to take because there's a story that you're building. And so if you only start the story 2 days ahead of time, how does that really look thoughtful and purposeful? So that's what I would, say, that you're being intentional about what you want your experience to be and what you want people to take away from when they look at your resume, what you've contributed in your environment.
I actually want to build on that because what we believe is one of the most critical components of this whole job search process, and really it's exactly to what you're saying, Nicole, is most young people don't understand that they have a story. They don't even know how to go by thinking about it. So we go through an exercise with them and help extract information and almost help them realize, well, you just talked about that problem that you solved. And so it's important, people think in threes. You can't really handle more than 3 things. So you have to come down to understanding, what are the 3 things about me, like that make me who I am, so that, when you're in an interview situation, there's so many behavioral questions that are asked of you, but if you always know what the 3 core things are about you and you practice, then you'll be able to meet those expectations. You'll be able to draw the parallels that hopefully you're hearing through having good, EQ to read the situation. And I would also say that this story needs to be consistent. So your resume, when you build it, needs to build a certain story so that when someone like Nicole is looking at it, things are jumping off the page and then you're able to articulate it differently. When people say, tell me about yourself, they don't want to hear what's on the resume. They want to know what's behind that, what motivated you, what did you accomplish, what are you capable of. So really spending a lot of time architecting your story is critically important. And to Nicole's point, starting early, because that story will evolve and change and you'll become more comfortable with it.
Right, yeah. No, and like I said, I love the notion of story, because story creates an interest. And what people keep staying connected to is something that's of interest. And if it's totally locked to a piece of paper, I could read that. But once I hear the challenges or how you approach things, now it's an engagement.
You mentioned something about internships. And
Yes.
internships are very important. All the firms are doing them. It's an earlier way, to get involved. It's, you get to see them, we get to see you. I mean, you can understand how it's important. It is not the be-all and end-all. I remember I was meeting with someone who didn't have any internship on her resume. And she was explaining to me, looking at her work experience, she was the concierge in a building, and she was doing that for several years. I said, wow. I said, that's an amazing job. But look at the amount of responsibility you have. Look at the trust that you're given. Look at the people you're interacting with. I mean, that's a story that you could tell that is awesome.
Yes.
And you just got to rejig it, and think about it. I mean, I could turn flipping burgers at McDonald's into an awesome job.
Yeah. Well, that's
And it
again
really could
knowing. Oftentimes we don't know the special skills we have. Like you said, the concierge thing, you'd be thinking, well, I'm going for this job, how does it apply? But it's the relationships, problems,
Well, you
it's
could
how
draw
you
so
deal with
many
it, it's turning it
parallels.
into a, absolutely. Questions? I see, yeah. I want to also, after I see a subtitle of Career Week is the future of meaningful work. So I'll let you think about what is, how do you make work meaningful? We're talking about what they do to get a part of your organization, but once they're there, how do you develop them? How do you create a situation where they want to stick around? What is meaningful in this current environment of constant change? Yeah.
My name is Veronica, as I introduced. I'm an Industry Relations Assistant Director here at School of Professional Studies. And I will ask a question on behalf of a population maybe that is not here, but I see students on a daily basis as an employee at the Career Design Lab here. And lots of them are actually at SPS are career transitioners in a way that they already have careers. They've probably worked maybe 5 to 7 years in different industries, and they are here at the School of Professional Studies to learn and to maybe gain that knowledge and build a network. And very often when we suggest them to look into opportunities such as internships, they come back and they say, but it's too late, I'm already in my mid-30s. And those organizations like even Tier 2 would be like, you know, we're looking into this like young talent straight from undergrad. And this is a challenge because the students come back to us and we have to lead them in a way that kind of like try to open opportunities, sometimes even see through like basically looking into different strategies on how to approach a network. How do organizations approach those transitioners with years of experience that are graduating from universities with new skills? And do you see that there is something that might be changing outside of those like top campus recruitment programs that recruit from undergrads only or let's say MBAs?
Right, so the student is maybe 35, come back to schools, got a career going, wants to go in a different direction. What advice, what thoughts do you have? How do you see that?
I'll jump in. So the world of beer is pretty popular right now. So we get resumes from every possible career you could imagine. I will tell you the first and foremost thing I look for when hiring is interest. It's not whether or not you had an internship. It's not whether or not you read a book. I assume that we can teach you what to do, or if not, you can pick it up elsewhere, whether through an adjunct class or through reading on the side, et cetera. But interest is what's most important, I think, to convey.
Well, I'll tell a story, which I think is really kind of interesting. Someone in our family, much older than that, decided to change careers. And he went back to school. He's in school now getting his master's. And what he has decided to do is to pivot into nonprofit management. Never been doing that before in his life. And what did he do? He volunteers for an organization, so he's creating an internship, and he's, you know, learning in terms of the different aspects of the business while he studies, and he's not getting paid, but he goes in 2 days a week and he does whatever they need. Primarily, a lot of it has to do with the company he's at is, repurposing old computers, so stripping them and getting them ready to donate to organizations. And so, you know, he was being resourceful. And I think that's what you have to be when you're in a transition. And, you know, usually smaller companies, people who know people, professors perhaps who are adjuncts, who are in the industry, just going back to what Jeremy said in terms of interest and passion, you know, you're really interested in this. And, you know, especially if you've been in another career, you have skills and experience to bring to someone else, you know, without you realizing that it's a different career. But they see that, you know, they see what you've done in the past. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, actually that's I would imagine a major advantage nowadays in that everything is changing and there is uncertainty, and so people now expect at different points in life people are changing around. So probably the current age we're in, whatever that is, probably is conducive to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are things that you learn when you're in an organization and things that you learn that make you a subject matter expert. So some of you I know are in the risk organization. So there's a way to look at risk, and there's a way to, you know, be a CRO, a chief risk officer, or to look at compliance, and there's subject matter expertise that's a part of that. But when you're changing careers, one of the greatest advantages you have is diversity of thought and perspective. And that's one of the things that we look for. We actually look for diversity. And when I say diversity, yes, it's gender and ethnicity and sexual orientation and all of those things that we look for and we measure, but it's also diversity of thought and perspective. And when you have a fresh perspective and a fresh set of eyes on specific things, you can really, that gives you an edge over people who have kind of been on its linear path. And you can use that to your advantage. And that's where, if you go into thinking about your story or your brand and what is that edge, that's what you want to be able to use to your advantage, to be able to really say, you know, here's how I look at things differently, or here's an example of when, you know, because I was uncomfortable or because this wasn't my area of expertise, I was actually able to offer this perspective, which changed the whole way in the project or whatever it is that you worked on. So, I mean, I don't necessarily look for internships and those kinds of things. I really look for, can I make a connection with a person, and do they offer a fresh perspective, and do they know themselves enough? Because you get a level of maturity when someone who switches career in their mid-30s or mid-40s, or people do that all the time, and it doesn't matter where you are. But do you know yourself and what you're going to bring to the table that's different and give you the edge over people who've had that traditional path? And for me, sometimes that might make me more curious about what you have to offer, and I'd be more willing to take a chance.
We've had some really great success stories of bringing in people exactly like you mentioned, you know, who came in, you know, with a financial background, but doing maybe internal accounting, and then they are now looking to come into a firm like ours. And again, you got to put yourself in the employer's standpoint. You know, from my standpoint, so how could that person help me? They help me because now they're sitting with a client, and they could say to that client, I've been on your side of the desk. I know what you're feeling. That's really powerful. And we have to teach them some of our skills, so they may have to take a few steps back as far as the skills, because it is very different what we do, but there's a lot of similarities. So a lot of it is the 4 A's, and the biggest A in that case is attitude.
Yeah.
You know, this person has to realize that while they're 35 years old, they may be working.
Which is incredibly young.
It is very young.
Yeah.
Yes.
They've been working for someone who's
Consider
25.
that almost a startup
Their
at this
boss
point.
could be 10 years younger than them.
Yes.
In my world, is that going to be an issue? Is that an issue? And, you know, we'll ask, and, you know, we have to, and sometimes it is, and it doesn't work. Sometimes it isn't, and it does.
It also gives you, the story theme. The, story is built on a journey. And so that is an opportunity to say, hey, I've been successful here, but I'm passionate about doing something different. And people, I think, identify with that as an ability to move forward, right?
Applying for a job, whether it's from your resume or in the middle of an interview, saying, why, if you're looking at this as a concern, you're looking at it as a negative, it really does come down to the story. You have to figure out how to spin your story so that it seems like an advantage, whether it's I'm bringing an outside perspective or otherwise. I really think it comes down to, if you're legitimately interested in the role, the other person's going to pick up on that. It's how you share that with them.
I want to follow up. I know we're down to about 10 minutes or so, I think, in terms of the time frame. So a couple of things I want to get to. One of them is I'm intrigued by Career Week, the future of meaningful work. And you people are on the cutting edge of what's happening out there. So my question is, what is the future of meaningful work? Again, we've been talking about what we're looking for from, or what you're looking for from people who are coming to you. I'm almost interested in what is it that they get once they come into your world. I mean, maybe even start with Shavit. Learning leadership development, which is where I kind of came from. I saw it as my job is to keep people not only learning and developing throughout a career, but also engaged so that they would stay at a place like NASA. And so that's where I think of the meaningful and the future. Where are we going, and what are the what are the positive things I think that you're seeing from organizations? And we talked a little bit about the messy learning. We talked a little bit about the fact that people are learning different skills. To me, which I think are all good things. But
yeah, I think that there's a few things here. One is, in terms of meaningful work, is you have to decide what's meaningful to you. Meaning you've got to live your purpose. And to do that, you've got to explore what your purpose is, and you could have multiple things. And so for us, engagement is around, does the work that you do give you a sense of purpose? So for me, for example, it's important for me to come into work every day feeling like I made a difference, feeling like I made a leader better at the way in which they interact with their people, feeling like I helped somebody learn something new, feeling like I was really able, I have 4 kids, if I'm gonna leave my kids at home and go into work every single day, it's important for me to feel like it was worth it for me to come to work because I made a difference. That's my meaningful work, that's my purpose. Everybody in this room has a purpose, everyone at this panel has a purpose, and you've gotta really be connected with that. Because when you work with people who maybe aren't connected with their purpose or aren't living or working their purpose, it makes it much harder to function as a team. It makes it much harder to deal with adverse situations. It makes it much harder to deal with risks or to deal with change because you don't have everybody as engaged or committed. And so that's really important as you go into the workforce is, what is your why? Why do you do what you do, and can you connect with that? And that why is probably going to change. It's changed for me along the way. And every once in a while, I try to reconnect with that and really figure out what's my story, why do I do what I do. My kids now ask me all the time, what do you do? Because they just think I talk on the phone all day. But how do you live your purpose and find out how you can do what you love? And it makes an environment where, we've got 206,000 people at Bank of America. It's very important to be surrounded by people who are connected to their purpose and are working toward a common goal together. And that's really where meaningful work comes in, because you can really, it is possible for one person to make a difference, but when you're connected with people and you're working with people that you enjoy working with, you can really make a huge difference, whether it's to the clients that we serve, to the clients that we serve internally, the clients that we serve externally, to the financial industry as a whole, to the communities that we're in. It's really important to make that difference and have a purpose.
I think everything that Shavit said is absolutely insightful, but the thing that I think young professionals kind of feel a little lost at is that they don't necessarily feel that work is meaningful early in their career. And so therefore, you as an individual need to really figure out, well, what is that what I'm working toward? We often get feedback from our clients because we mentor them when they're in their first year in their job. And sometimes, a lot of times, they can't connect the dots and they can't understand that their small task has a greater meaning to everyone on the team. And so we have to help them, be a little more introspective and understand that, someone's asking you to do this because it has meaning. They're not having you do it for lack of meaning. And so I think it's a great lesson to start teaching people very early in their career in terms of what is meaningful. What's meaningful to me this month is going to change what's meaningful to me next month. And if I feel that I want to be part of the conversation and I want to contribute more, maybe what you need to do is to go to your boss, or if you don't have a comfortable relationship with your boss, there's someone else in the organization that you've aligned yourself with who's maybe closer to your age but has been there for 2 or 3 years, and an ally in terms of how can I get more involved, how can I work on a project that I think I could make a difference on, and just being resourceful and finding those opportunities and not having people deliver to you, because I think that that's the expectation in today's young generation of it's waiting for me, and it's not. You said that earlier. And
I think the time thing, to me, you really struck a chord, because I was doing work with my daughter, and the work she was doing I thought was so cool. I said, this is how, and she said, it's a job. It's, I'm getting paid. And I'm looking for that meaning and that motion. And at that point, we were on the same thing, and I'm thinking, what's missing there? Because, and I'm explaining, don't you see? And it took several months later where there was an interest, there was a joy, and it came to do with working with someone who she really liked working with and the relationship. So I think that's something that I'd never thought about, is that, you don't step into something and, wow, you have meaning here. There, you step into something and you're having an exchange and you're establishing things. You look at the relationship. So there's a timing factor. There's a patience that I think that
also, Ed, that we are in the world of I think we're in the age right now, the era of the employee. I mean, if you look at employment is at an all-time low. I mean, again, you got to think of the employers. It's hard for us to find really good people. It's really hard. So when we get them, you want to keep them.
Yes.
Yeah.
We want to keep them as long as we can.
It's true.
So how do we do that? We got to try to listen to them. We got to try to hear what it is that they want. We got to give them good work. We got to pay them fairly. We got to give them a good environment to work in. If we don't do any of those things, there are other people everywhere. I mean, E&Y will swap them up. Every other firm in the country will take these people, and they could be with us for 2 or 3 years, and they could go to any firm in America. So we got to work really hard to keep them. And as a partner in the firm, I mean, I understand that and I appreciate that, and I want to show them the love. If I don't show them the love that I'm interested in them, we're going to lose them. Now, again, I can never be, your career is more important to you than your career is to me, right? It just is. It should be, But I got to show you that I care about your career. If I don't show you that as a individual in the firm, if you don't get that feeling from the employer you're working for, you're not going to be happy, and you're going to find the greener pasture. And I want to keep you because the investment that we talked about, I'm making a huge investment in you. The longer I can keep you to stay, the more money I'll make, right? Hopefully, I'm also helping you by giving you good opportunities and training you, and you're learning. But if those things aren't aligned, I'm in trouble. And I'm going to be in big trouble because the job market is the way it is. I mean, I spoke to our HR department. You probably know these statistics. I'm told, for people that have 5 to 7 years experience, there are like, 300 opportunities for one person, right? So, I mean, as you advance in your career, because people leave the industry, unfortunately, in my world, after 3 to 5 years, they leave the industry. They get disenchanted, who the hell knows what, they're gone. So how do we keep them longer? So again, as the employer, I want to keep you, and I just got to figure out how, and if I don't, I lose.
Yeah, they're wondering where those 299 opportunities are, probably.
I just wanted to add, I mean, you kind of talked about this idea of, meaningful work, and I think some of that comes from the idea of knowing what the common goal is for everyone, because I think that creates a sense of community, which then allows you to feel more comfortable asking better questions, maximizing your experience. And so EY a couple of years ago went through an overhaul and really started to talk to people about what brings them into work every day. What is it that, keeps you committed to this? And that's really where we develop that whole idea of building a better working world and challenging each of our leaders to say, whether it is within our audit function or whether it is within our tax function or our consulting function or even our core business services, which is non-revenue, what does that mean to you, and how can you trickle that down so that people have a shared sense of purpose? Because the word purpose gets thrown around so much that you don't necessarily know what that means. And sometimes in the beginning or even in the middle of your career, it's about feeling anchored to a community. Feeling like somebody has a certain set of core principles that they think are important for everybody to experience and builds all of their learning and development and experiences around that. And that's something that I think EY is constantly doing and is invested in. And so when you talk about development, there's EY and U. And there's 3 components of that. There's your formal learning that happens in the classroom or sometimes in the virtual academies that we have now. There's also this focus on coaching, really asking you. I get a communication every month that says, have you been coached? So it challenges you to ask yourself that question. Well, if I wasn't coached, then should I think about how I'm engaging with people differently to make sure that's happening? And then one of the other components is just experiences. And so those experiences can be the day-to-day projects that you're on, or also because we have our corporate responsibility initiatives, sometimes people get very involved in mentoring. I'm involved in a mentoring program that's run by EY professionals. So we're not going out to a not-for-profit organization. We partner with high schools around the country, and it's us working with juniors and seniors. So those are all ways that you can continue to garner different experiences to help you develop. And so I think that that's important to know. And as you're learning about different organizations, find out how they create community, find out how they develop people, and do those things resonate with you.
So there's a lot that's going on we haven't even touched. I think community is right on target. I think it's one of the key issues. I'm aware of your time. We have about 2 minutes. I want to give each of you, just 20 seconds to say whatever it is you want to give, either advice or your thoughts or something you think is something you want to share.
I'll start.
Jeremy? Yeah.
I think the biggest revelation I came to earlier in my career, speaking on behalf of millennials to some extent, is thinking more from a longer-term perspective. I think with regards to the idea of meaningful, that's really also the definition of meaningful is a question of perspective. I think the idea of having 7 different careers, which I was speaking to earlier, is not anyone's goal. I don't think anyone's out there to try and churn through careers. I just think younger generations have more of an ADD issue, and so they jump around a little bit. But it wasn't, for example, for me until I took a step back and I thought, well, where do I want to be 10 years from now, not where do I want to be 2 years from now, that I really made a fundamental change in my career that I personally find more meaningful. So I think it's that longer-term perspective that's really helpful in figuring out where you're going to best be successful, and that will shine through in the recruiting process as well. If you're interviewing for a role that you want to be in the long term, I promise you, whether it's the stories, whether it's how you write your resume, it will come through. People will hear that.
Right. And being patient, you're going to get there is the point. Shavit?
I would just add that the only way to really learn and to have that growth mindset constantly, which is critical, is to experience it. And you have to push yourself beyond where you feel you're comfortable every day in order to really get to the places where you want to be. You have to kind of think of yourself like a rubber band and recognize that there is a longer way than you can go than you actually think about in the morning. And then when you get up every day, you should ask yourself, you know, how can I be better today than I was yesterday? And what does that mean in terms of my relationships, in terms of how I interviewed, in terms of what I think about myself and how I'm positioning myself, and what I believe about my strengths? You've got to constantly be in a state of conversation with yourself, not out loud, but inside voice. But you've got to constantly be in that state of conversation, because if you can't push yourself outside that comfort zone, it's going to be harder for you to get to the places where you want to go.
Conversation for improvement. Jill?
I think everyone, it's really been an interesting conversation about all the things that, you know, you need to do to be comfortable. Again, I'm looking at this from the lens of, you know, the young professional, and similar to Jeremy's perspective, because that's who we work with. I think it's important to find ways for yourself to make yourself happy and not be looking for other people's to fulfill you. You know, Nicole, you mentioned something that I wanted to touch on, which is great, which is this corporate responsibility. I happen to be on the board of a nonprofit, and, you know, even though it's related to what I do it because I enjoy it and I want to make a difference. So that's just me as a personal goal. And I think that if every day, to Shavit's point, if you wake up and you said, you know, how can I make a difference today in a helping profession, people who work with us in our organization or in a helping profession. So we're thinking about, well, how can we help today? And you just never know when that tipping point will occur. And all of a sudden a story will come back and you'll be, wow, oh, I can't believe that I helped them get there, and they had this revelation. So just being open to helping people, and I think taking, you know, healthy risks. That's what's going to push you a little bit, to your point, challenging yourself. You know, don't do something crazy if you're not that kind of person, but take a chance, especially when you're young, you know, even when you're older, do something on the side, you know, make it interesting, change it up a little bit.
Take a risk and help. Carolina?
Yeah, I'm going to give more of a tip, something that I have to try to remind myself to follow. But I would say never eat lunch alone. I think there is a great opportunity to reach out to your coworkers and network and share information. I think it's really easy when you are in your day-to-day job and just either run out really quickly, grab your lunch, and go back to your computer and keep working, or you just skip lunch altogether. And I think there's a great opportunity for you to really build that community, although we didn't get to talk about that much, but also just interact with your coworkers. There's a lot of information that you can find out about what's going on in the organization, find out what other people are working on, and, you know, you can also find out if there's other things that you're interested in by just interacting with your coworkers on things that maybe you wouldn't have normally found out about by, you know, listening to a presentation. There's an opportunity there that I think you shouldn't miss, and it's just one of my tips.
Okay, have lunch with someone in relationships. Stephen?
I would say, you know, get out there. You know, be involved. Try to be a leader. Don't just be involved in an organization. Don't just join the organization. Try to be a leader in the organization. That's a big difference. You know, I see a lot of resumes where people say, I'm a member of this, I'm a member of that. I say, so tell me a little bit about it. Oh, have you gone to any meetings? No. It just doesn't mean anything.
Not a good response. You got to make up something even. I was president. No.
But, you know, and then also I believe in this whole give in order to get. And I really preach that. I try to live it every day. I want to give to others. I want to make other people make their job easier, you know, help them in any way. When you go and look for a job, you know, you're asking a friend or a relative, and you should be doing that. Networking is awesome. And people don't do it. They're afraid to do it. And you shouldn't be afraid to network with anybody and ask them for help, but also be respectful and also see if you could do something for them. Turn around and say, what can I do for you? And I think that makes a difference. And be sincere and be genuine, because if you're not, you lose all credibility.
So give be a giver and sincerity. And Nicole, you get the final word.
I know.
You can
my
say anything you want to say.
goodness, Exactly. No, I just, when I think about the whole topic of being uncomfortable, I do think a lot of that comes from failure. And so my big push for everyone is always asking yourself, what would you do if you did not think you would fail? And that will keep you striving for being curious. That'll keep you striving to step outside of things that you may not know. And that's really a powerful tool to learn.
A whole nother theme, failure. Being comfortable with it, because the most successful people fail a lot. So that's a great panel. Let's thank them for Jeremy, David, Jill, Carolina, Stephen, and Nicole. Thank you very much for the time. And we've recorded this, so it'll be available. We'll make it available. Anyway, thank you again.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming.